Well, he wasn't actually greeted by boos, but he was booed when he brought up his take on illegal immigrants and amnesty. And of course, I'm speaking about former Governor Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush, who refused to take the pledge for no new taxes. That got him a little bit of bad press as well. His spokesman said he never signed any pledges for any activist or lobby group, and he's not going to start now. He doesn't have to sign a pledge. He could just say, I will not raise taxes. Why didn't he do that? But I digress. Jeb Bush came in fifth place with 8.3% of the vote. He knew going in that he would be facing a predominantly hostile crowd. Last year, he decided to not even go to CPAC. And I think when the straw poll came out, he was 3% or less, might have been 1 or 2%. His contention was, I'm not interested in that at this point. I haven't decided if I'm going to run. Now he's decided, so he had to go. It's part of the dance. And his point was to show his courage. I'm going right in there. I am conservative. I have a conservative record as governor of the state of Florida, and I can do this. Let me speak plainly, if I may. Jeb Bush is part of the moneyed class. He is part of the aristocracy of the Republican Party. He is part of that regime of people that, from all that I have seen in my 30-plus years of being active in the political process, that they're not concerned about the average person. It doesn't wake them up in the night or trouble them in the morning about babies being butchered. Some of them were pushing Ronald Reagan to create these free trade deals, most favored nation status with China under Clinton, so that their stock would go up and so that they could get the cost of labor down. Many of these Republicans have been pushing John Boehner and Mitch McConnell, especially McConnell, to allow Obama's illegal amnesty to stand, because they, as the Chamber of Commerce leaders, need cheap, legal labor. For a long time, there were a lot of people who were knowingly employing people, illegal immigrants, people who didn't have a Social Security number, people who they weren't sure whether or not these are legal immigrants or not. They were employing them. But then the federal government and state government started to crack down a little bit. And so some of the big businesses, many of them run by Republicans, said, look, we need labor. We need inexpensive labor, and these people can provide it for us. So let's figure out a way to get them into the stream of legality. They're not concerned about us. They help send... I'm going down a rabbit trail, but I want you to grasp the seriousness of it. I grew up in Rochester, New York. I spent 20 years after that in Binghamton, New York. So about 20 years in Rochester, New York, 20 years in Binghamton, New York. Rochester, New York was in the top 20 cities that the Nazis intended to bomb if they could get to the United States. Because IBM was there, Kodak was there, Bausch & Lomb was there, Xerox was there. In Binghamton, IBM was there. The world's largest shoe manufacturing plant, Endicott Johnson, was in Binghamton, New York. Savin Copiers was there. This long, proud tradition of manufacturing in Rochester and in Binghamton, New York. Smith Corona typewriters just outside of Binghamton. The flight simulator company, their name escapes me now. They were in Binghamton. One by one, these companies have closed their doors or laid off enormous amounts of people and moved their headquarters or their manufacturing to other places. Savin Copiers is gone. Smith Corona typewriters went to Mexico. I don't even know if they're still in business anymore. Endicott Johnson, employing 10,000 people, gone. Gone. The jobs went to Brazil, South America, went to the Pacific Rim. Kodak, a huge, huge plant in Rochester, New York. They've literally bombed it. They have demolished huge buildings. And it's just barren, you know, like it kind of resembles areas of Detroit. A barren production wasteland. Xerox has had to cut back. In Binghamton, IBM used to have 3 major plants there, and they're all but gone now, having shipped jobs to other states and overseas. This is in part the legacy of that moneyed class from the Democratic side of the aisle and the Republican side of the aisle. The guys who jab each other and tease each other about who's got the biggest private jet, or how many private jets they own, or how many properties they own in the United States or overseas or in Central America. These are people who, as I said, they're not vexed in their soul about marriage. They're not vexed about babies being butchered. They're not worried about the decimation of America's working class. They're trying to get cheap labor in from Mexico. I know I'm painting with a broad brush, and I know that there are people who are wealthy and who do not fit this bill. And to them, I tip their hat, my hat rather. I don't know enough of the rich elite to be able to say good witch, bad witch. I know that the people at Interstate Battery are believers, for example. I know that Dave, the owner of Wendy's, was a believer. So I know that I'm painting with a little bit of a broad brush, but this I can tell you for sure, that when the wealthy, Republican, moneyed people of Wall Street get together and raise millions of dollars for Jeb Bush right out of the chute, they're not interested in ideology. They're interested in their money. And they're interested in getting a president into the White House who's going to manage the economic affairs at the highest level, Wall Street money, taxes. They're interested in getting someone in like Jeb Bush, who's one of them. They don't want a renegade like Rand Paul. They don't want a renegade like Scott Walker. They didn't want a renegade like Ronald Reagan. But the people of the country did. And so my hope, my prayer, is that we will not be fooled again. That we will not allow the moneyed class of the Republican Party to buy the next Republican nominee. Please, God, save us from our friends. One of the greatest joys and passions that I have had for almost my entire life is music. And one of the best times that I had was putting together some albums in Nashville of songs that I wrote. One of the albums is called Dark Sunglasses Day. This is a country album, a lot of love songs and patriotic music. We've made it available to you online, and I hope that you'll go take a listen. You might be pleasantly surprised. You might even find yourself singing along. It took me 14 years to write it. 4 rewrites, countless edits. I poured my heart and soul into Dragon Slayers. At points a very inspiring and painful book to write. I encourage you to go to our website and look at the reviews that we have gotten from readers of this book, and then avail yourself. It's an allegory, and I promise you, you'll be inspired.